Mary Nightingale. Welcome to the Piper podcast, How I Grew My Brand. Here we talk to successful founders about how they built their businesses, how the idea was born and how they nurtured it with all the ups and downs, the mistakes and of course the good fortune they had along the way, and the key moments when they had to adapt the business to enable it to thrive. Piper sees some of those moments in terms of 1770, the number of employees or sites or perhaps turnover. Either way, these are inflection points which can signal the need for step change. Today I'm with Robin Hutson, founder of the collection of English boutique hotels all called The Pig, but with each pig having its own personality and sense of self. Over 15 years, The Pig has grown to a drove of 9, with 2 more about to open and still more planned beyond that. With its laid-back, warm hospitality and a commitment to environment and social responsibility, The Pig is now a brand legend. Welcome, Robin.
Good morning, Mary. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's very, very nice to meet you. We have so much to talk about, don't we? Not least of which the collective noun for pigs. There are several. You've looked at them all, I'm sure. Sounder, team, drift, litter. What do you reckon about drove? What do you think?
No, just a group of piglets, I think, is where we arrived at some time ago. But
Squealing piglets.
Squealing piglets, yes. They sometimes squeal, that's for sure.
So why did you call your hotels The Pig?
Well, I think really you have to look back into what was going on in country house hotels and indeed boutique hotels, as we now refer to them as. 15 years ago, the country house hotel sector was dominated by rather fusty, formal, rather scary places. And as good as they weren't really for everyone, and a lot of people were very scared to drive up the drive. And so I wanted to break that down, so make it feel much more approachable. And I concluded that people aren't really scared of going to a pub. So if it sounds a bit like a pub, then that's probably a good thing. And we wanted to bring the kitchen garden and sort of homegrown produce right to the fore and make that our sort of raison d'etre. And so I wanted to give it an agricultural name. And after messing around with lots and lots of names, you wouldn't believe the number of different versions of pig we had. You know, the kind of mad pig or the pink pig or whatever it was.
It was always going to be pig, was it, you reckon?
Well, we arrived at that a good long time before we actually settled on The Pig. And it was actually one of my co-directors that said, after presenting him with another list of 20 names of wild pigs and spotted pigs and everything else, he said, "Oh, for Christ's sake, just call it The Pig."
Well, look, there is so much to discuss with that, and we will come back to The Pig and how it came into being. But first, let's talk a little bit about Robin Hutson. Background, upbringing, education, all of that.
Sure. Look, I grew up in southeast London. I lived the first 14 years of my life in Forest Hill. I went to school in New Cross, and that was a pretty spicy time to be growing up in southeast London. It was London in those days in the suburbs felt a bit scary, to be honest. It was the era of skinheads and gangs and whatever.
Clever boy at school, bright boy.
I was okay initially. At primary school, I was head boy, so I must have done something vaguely right. I think I was a decent all-rounder. I wasn't brilliant at anything, but I could play a bit of football and I could just about write my name. And then I went to an all-boys school in New Cross, a grammar school as it then was.
So you passed your 11 plus then?
So I passed my 11 plus and I went to somewhere called Haberdasher Aske's. All-boys school, very traditional. I enjoyed the rugby. Didn't really enjoy much else. A bit of drama. I quite enjoyed that. But I'm not what you would describe as academic, shall we say. And then my parents had the very good sense to move us out of London when I was 14. I was probably hanging out with a slightly adventurous crowd, shall we say. And they thought that we probably need to get this boy out of London. So we moved to Godalming in Surrey, and I went to a very good mixed grammar school. So I was 14 years old, hormones just kicking in, all of a sudden surrounded by lots of young ladies. And I didn't really concentrate on the work very much, but I had a brilliant time. I was supposed to get 10 O-levels, and I ended up with 2 English and art. That was my haul. And so I wasn't invited to attend the sixth form.
Can you remember how your parents felt about that?
They probably saw it coming.
Did they?
Well, I didn't really care, I mean, you don't really think about such things at that time. I was just kind of drifting from one party to another and thinking about the next LP I was going to buy and, so on.
And your parents were probably saying to each other, oh, God, what's he going to do?
Absolutely.
He's never going to make anything of his life.
Exactly. And my brother, 3 years my senior, was a real grafter at school, and he sort of did okay. So I was probably a bit of a letdown at that stage.
Terrible disappointment.
But my mother, who was a great home cook, as was her mother. She was one of these people that never looked at a recipe book, could make 20 types of pastry and sponge and cake from her head, and all of that. And I would like messing around in the kitchen with her and cooking in inverted commas. And she said, well, you like messing around in the kitchen. Why don't you have a look at, becoming a chef? And
but
anyway,
you like the idea of that?
Yeah,
kind of enough.
Yeah, I thought that would be all right. That would keep me out of mischief for a couple of years. Anyway, the next course up the page from chef was something called an OND in Hotel and Catering Operations. And so I enrolled at Weybridge Technical College, did two years of, it involved a bit of cooking and a bit of accounting and whatever. Anyway, I somehow scraped through that. And
did you like it? Did you enjoy it?
I did quite enjoy it. I enjoyed the practical stuff. I didn't think much of the accounting and some of the other kind of more academic areas of it, but it was pretty basic, to be honest. Anyway, I managed to scrape through that and was lucky enough to be taken on by the Savoy Hotel Group in London as a management trainee when I was 18. So,
well, you say you were lucky enough, but I mean, that can't have been nothing. That must have been quite a competitive process, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, you went for some of these training opportunities, and I seem to remember going to Trust House Forte and the Hilton, and I ended up at the Savoy Group. And yeah, somehow blagged my way into that. And the scheme, such as it was then, was a loose 3 or 4 years whereby you spend 6 months in different departments. And they said to me, OK, your first department, you're in the restaurant at Claridge's. So at the age of 18, I entered the back door of Claridge's and, kind of haven't looked back, really, I suppose.
And did you love it when you arrived there? Was it something?
It was bloody hard work, I tell you.
And
it wasn't glamorous. You went in next to the bins at the back door, and it didn't really improve very much until you walked up the stairs into the restaurant.
Front of house.
Front of house, yeah. There was very much back of house, front of house there. I mean, the staff food was like gruel, and I mean, it was you worked 6 days a week, split shifts. And I was paid £21 a week, of which £10.50 went on my rent in a dump in Tufnell Park. And it was pretty brutal. But the training was amazing. And look, within 2 months of being at Claridge's, and when I say I was a waiter at Claridge's, what I actually did, I carried a big tray up and down stairs. There were 26 concrete steps between the restaurant and the kitchen. And you used to have to load up these ridiculous-sized trays that were bigger than you with all sorts of plates of food and, more importantly, take the dirty stuff down again. It was, character-building stuff, I suppose. But within 2 months, I remember volunteering as an extra for banqueting and finding myself serving the Queen at a state banquet. I'm a kid from South East London. Hardly knew my arse from my elbow, and it was really eye-opening, to be honest.
Yeah, it must have been amazing. And then what happened from there? How did you then progress?
My next stint was at a place called, it doesn't exist anymore, it was called Stone's Chop House. It was rather like Simpsons in the Strand. I learnt more there about the scams and fiddles that were going on amongst the staff than anywhere else, so that was eye-opening in a different way. there was a light bulb moment for me there, apart from learning to make some cocktails, which have served me well over the years.
Yeah.
I was maybe 19 and they put me on as a sort of under wine waiter, a assistant sommelier or something. I hardly knew the difference between red and white, but I really became fascinated by the kind of, it was like stamp collecting, only a lot more fun, all the labels and the years and the vineyards. There was something that actually turned on a switch for me with wine, which has stayed with me.
Did you then go on to be general manager of, was it the Barclay?
A couple of other stops first. I went to the Barclay in what they called the bill office, which was behind reception. But there were those tubes, those vacuum tubes like you saw in Are You Being Served or something, and all the checks would come down from all the various departments, and I had to undo these torpedoes that had the checks in, process that onto somebody's bill without making a mistake, and send the tube back again. And so, I mean, it was honestly tedious.
But all interesting, all good experience in retrospect.
I know, good experience. And then they moved me on to reception after that at the Barclay, which was great. It was a who's who of A-listers checking in. In those days, the Barclay really was, well, it's still a wonderful hotel, but it was very special then. It was understated, and, in any one day you'd be checking in, I don't know, Dustin Hoffman or the Aga Khan or Peter Ustinov, all in one, Princess Diana would be in, and, it was kind of mental stuff. Did that for a little while, and then they send you off to Paris for a year. So I went to the Crillon in Paris.
Oh, wow, amazing!
Which is about the poorest I've ever been in my life, because you're paid as a stagiaire, which basically it really made me think about down and out in London and Paris. It was kind of almost. I mean, I did have a roof over my head, and it was a garret room at the top of the Crillon, so it was a very fancy address. One Place de Concorde. But yeah, I worked in a cost control office there. And anyway, then they hauled me back to the Barclay, assistant reception manager, and eventually reception manager. And I was young. I was 23 years old, and I was reception manager at the Barclay.
What an amazing life experience, though, because if you're right out the front, you've got to deal with it all, haven't you? All those tricky customers and.
I really thought I was the dog's bollocks at that stage,
well,
because
weren't you?
I had tails and kind of black and stripes, and I was strutting around there and
like a little cockerel.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Master of all heats of face. So, how did you end up at Chewton Glen? That was a little bit later, was it?
I did a total of 5 years at the Barclay as reception manager and assistant reception manager. Then I'd met Judy, my wife, and we decided we'd like to travel a little bit whilst we had the opportunity. And so I'd always had a thing about living on an island, and I found myself a job in Bermuda. And so we went to live in Bermuda for 2 years. Ollie, our eldest son, was born there. Eventually my work permit was pulled because a local wanted my job. And so I was looking for a job again, and someone recommended me for the role as GM at Chewton Glen. And I was super young. I was 28 years old. I mean, to become general manager of one of the best hotels in the country at 28 years old was kind of unheard of. And I had a great time. I was there for 8 years, and we worked for private owners, and we did lots of development during that time. We built the spa, we built extra bedrooms and all that. Built a 9-hole golf course, and so all the time gathering loads and loads of experience. So by my early 30s, I'd done 8 years mid-30s, I'd done 8 years as a GM in a decent hotel, and I thought, well, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And that led to the first entrepreneurial exploration with Hotel de Van. I left Chewton Glen with the sommelier that I had employed there, Gérard Basset.
He was a big influence on you, wasn't he?
Yeah, big influence, and sadly he's no longer with us. But he was a great friend, and we had a sort of wine friendship, if you like. And he ended up as best sommelier in the world, winning all sorts of competitions. But anyway, he gave us the credibility to, in my mind, I felt we could put Hotel de Van over the door with Gérard's influence. So I brought, I guess, the business side and the other aspects of the hotel and managed to raise the money, and he brought the credibility to it, really.
So all the time of being, you'd been a corporate man, really, until that point, but there was always an entrepreneur who was, biding his time, I guess.
I don't
Are you a
really...
risk taker, do you think?
No, I'm pretty careful with my risk-taking. So I do take risks, yes. They're carefully weighed up. They're not kind of completely, out there. But I think I'd reached the point where I thought, well, am I going to continue working for somebody else for the rest of my life, or shall I try to do something for myself? And the world was changing. This is 1993, 94, and hotels and restaurants were still kind of stuck in a kind of 70s, 80s time warp. It always amuses me now when I look back to the opening of Hotel de Van. We had, it sounds really crass now, but we had some little tent cards on the tables because you couldn't buy a cup of espresso on any high street in the country in 93. You could go to Bar Italy in Dean Street, but it didn't exist in the provinces. And we had a little tent card on our tables that said no dress code, which was a thing, children welcome, which was a thing, espresso coffee, which
we laugh now, but
we do laugh now. And when we opened, I decided that we'd try and kind of do something a little bit different with the rooms. They were to be simple. That we really had a concept of a restaurant with rooms. Great simple food, great wine, not overpriced, and the room should be really comfortable but simple. We were charging about £100 a night, but we had Egyptian cotton sheets. We were the first people to put duvets on beds because although we were all sleeping under duvets at home, hotels insisted on blankets and sheets at that time. We put fresh milk in the minibar. This is 93. That was definitely unheard of.
Yeah.
I insisted on 25 litres a minute through the shower head, and this sort of thing, which all of those aspects were central to that brand apart from the wine and so on. It was really good basics that would surprise and delight perhaps a little bit.
And I think it really did. Looking back to that time, I remember for the money, they were stylish.
Yeah.
And cool. Mm-hmm. A bit cool.
There was no such thing as a boutique hotel then. We're often credited with being at least catching the wave of boutique hotels or being somewhere close to the vanguard of that in the UK. It was the birth of where an element of design had come into hospitality, I think, in the form of smaller hotels.
And this is before Soho House and all of those things that came later, didn't they? So how soon did you know you had a success on your hands? Because I know you did sell it incredibly well, didn't you?
Yeah, when we started Hotel de Van, I think all too often these days people start a concept of a hotel or restaurant and they start with the idea, we're going to have a group of these. But actually, our focus at that time was really to make this one work. God bless my wife, she had allowed me to put our house up as a guarantee for the business. It was the only thing we had to back up a pretty serious bank loan, and we'd raised quite a lot of money from a raft of shareholders. So it absolutely had to be a success.
Yeah.
And we'd spent every last penny, as you do with these projects. The credit card was maxed out. I'd borrowed money from my parents who weren't super wealthy in any way.
Sleepless nights over that?
A lot of sleepless nights, but most of the nights were spent. We couldn't employ a night porter, so Gerard and I took turns sleeping on the sofa, having banged in a 15-hour day before that, and kind of that's how it how it was. But I think that's the true spirit of entrepreneurship, if you like, whereby you do anything to kind of ensure the success. But fortunately, day one that we opened, a few people came through the front door. And, obviously a few people that we knew. from our days at Chewton Glen and so on. And gradually the momentum built. And we were, it sounds ridiculous, but the Winchester Hotel is located just by the law courts. And the week after we opened, there was the trial of Rosemary West. So there was a media circus going on around that. And we were the beneficiaries of the media circus. And so we were stuffed full of hacks who drank like fish. And the best part was that they all wanted somewhere to park their outside broadcast units. And our car park overlooked the back of the court. So I had not only the bedrooms all sold, the bar was going great guns, and the car park was earning me more money than the bedrooms because of the outside broadcast unit. It was brilliant.
It's amazing, isn't it, how chance can play such an enormous role in success or otherwise.
That was very fortuitous. And then the other key moment was there was a very influential restaurant critic at the time called Jonathan Meades, and he absolutely loved what we were doing. And he wrote a really insightful piece that said this is the future of hospitality, and and it really set us on our way, and that of course attracted the attention of other critics and so on. So we that was a key turning moment, and then we were just stuffed full for forever. You could never get a table, you could never get a room, and so on.
So you sold Hotel du Vin to MWB.
We
66 million. That's quite good.
Yeah, we did 7 hotels and 1 in the pipeline. We were approached by MWB, who already owned Malmaison at the time.
In 2004, so you've done 10 years at this point.
10 years to the day. I turned our 10-year party into a goodbye party. Yeah, I mean, we were made an offer that we couldn't understand.
And definitely couldn't refuse.
And definitely couldn't refuse. And so, hey, and I think we sold at the right time.
You're listening to the Piper Podcast. This time I'm with Robin Hutson, founder of the Pig Hotels. At what point did you decide to do the Pig?
Well, I'd worked as a non-exec director at Soho House for about 13 years in total, and Nick Jones said to me, why don't you become chairman? We want to expand in the States and so on. And so we had a riot of a time flying around the world. I bet, yeah. Visiting, every city in America. And, it was good stuff. We had a lot of fun doing it. Anyway, in the middle of all that, we sold the majority stake of Soho House to Richard Kerring. And the board makeup at that point didn't really allow for me to be there, and so I sort of sold myself out of a job in a way. And I'd made a little bit of cash from Hotel du Vin, and I was kind of thinking that I would get a couple of consultancies or a couple of board positions or something, and just I wasn't really looking for the next thing. And I got a call from one Jim Ratcliffe of Ineos fame, because he had started building a hotel in the New Forest. Our kids had been to school together, so we knew each other a little bit through that. And he said, look, we're in the middle of building this hotel. It feels to me like it's a bit out of control, and I think we need some help. Would you get involved? Cut a long story short, yes, I did, and we launched Limewood, as it's now known. It was then called Park Hill, which I decided sounded like a block of flats in Croydon, so we changed it, and that's been it's been a great success and still is today. So we got Limewood open in 2008. There were a few other properties that were part of the Limewood portfolio, and there was one small hotel in Brockenhurst called Whitley Ridge Hotel, and I had this small hotel valued to sell it. Because it didn't really fit into the Limewood portfolio, really. It was valued at £1 million, which I felt was really nothing. But it was losing money, and it was in poor state, and it had about 16 bedrooms. But it was beautifully located right in the middle of the forest at Brockenhurst. So thinking about this £1 million, I was wandering around there was a kitchen garden there, but it was just full of weeds and 2 carrots. And that was another light bulb moment, really. And I thought, well, hang on, maybe we could bring this to the fore of something here. And so I started doodling with a bit of a business plan. And eventually I said to Jim, look, how about I buy half of this and we go 50-50 on this property, and then I'll raise some money from the bank to do the refurbishment and, sort it out. So he said, yeah, okay, let's do that. And eventually I shared my 50% with a couple of other management team. That was in 2011. And of course I was concerned, being in the middle of the forest. It wasn't like being in a town. Could we fill a wet Tuesday in February, with lunchtime guests and so on? But anyway, they came, and they haven't stopped coming. I mean, that's it's an incredible property to this day. And actually, within the Pig collection of hotels, I think it still performs probably the best, that very first one of all of them.
So tell me about the Pig. Where are we in terms of, how quickly did it grow? What were the critical milestones in terms of staff numbers, turnover, key hires and so on? And I'm bringing you, of course, to this idea of 7-17-70, which is the Piper sort of pattern of inflection points. First of all, do you recognise that? And secondly, where would the Pig fit into that?
Yeah, I certainly recognise that there are key moments, but perhaps I should talk about what the Pig is first, and
yes.
then we'll come on to that. So the idea of the Pig, as I've briefly said earlier, it was all about the kitchen garden. So the sort of mantra to start with was, we'll grow whatever we can, and what we can't grow, we will source from within 25 miles. I know everyone these days has got a local menu and this, that, and the other. But at the time, it wasn't a thing, really. And
was it seen as eccentric, do you think?
I think it was catching the zeitgeist of the moment, and it certainly proved to resonate with people. People were becoming more interested about where the food came from, and the increase in vegetarianism, it played into that, albeit that we had a very meaty name. But nevertheless, the kitchen garden has always played a key role, and I think that resonated. But then alongside that, we were trying to, again, really look at this sort of restaurant with rooms approach to life. So I always felt that if you filled that restaurant, then everything else would kind of follow. And if the rooms weren't priced too high, then it would be affordable to come and have a nice dinner and stay the night and so on. And that proved to be a successful formula. The interiors play a big part, which Judy, my wife, looked after. And we tried to design and decorate them in an organic way that didn't look as if they've come off an interior designer's desk. Slightly mismatched, slightly... I mean, people talk about shabby chic and all the rest of it, and I'm not sure I don't necessarily think we're shabby chic, but certainly an authentic and genuine way of decorating. When we all decorate our homes, we don't go out day one and buy everything for one room. We've got Granny's lamp over there, and we've got something that we've stuck together, in that corner. And yes, we have bought a nice table here, and so on. It was very much that approach to give it that sort of genuine feel. We like rusty things more than shiny things. We like it to feel above all very comfortable. We like it to feel somewhere that you can put your feet up on the coffee table and sit back and read the newspaper or fall asleep having just had an extra glass of wine. And it should have that relaxed feel. And when you talk about brands and you talk about key points, the relaxed, friendly nature, genuine and authentic, I think are the words that sort of come through with the Pig.
And was that something that you formulated right at the beginning, or was that something that evolved? I mean, was it a scribble on the back of an envelope and put adjectives down? And
I think it probably was. I think I made a bit of a half-assed business plan, and it was probably written down. But it's also my style of hospitality is that I was trying to get away from something that was over formal and over stuffy. I tend to think there are two types of hotel only. There are ones with soul and ones with no soul. I think most of us can tell within 5 seconds of being through the front door of somewhere whether it's got soul or not. And I wanted the pig to have soul in spades.
So give me some idea of scale, of numbers. I know you've stepped aside from the day-to-day now, but where is the pig in terms of employees, in terms of sites, in terms all of that? Just give us an idea of that.
We stepped back from the pig at the end of 24, and at that point we had 10 sites open, so that's 8 what I would describe as full pigs, and we have one pub in the Cotswolds. It's a 6-room, full-on foodie pub. Yeah. And then we have a townhouse pig in Southampton, which is 12 bedrooms. It's small. So we have a total of 10 sites. Actually, I don't know the current employee numbers, but circa 1,000 people. The collection now turns over about 60 million. The average room rate's about £300 a night. They're still running at about 80% occupancy, still hugely successful and looking to grow. So a run rate of about 1 a year was right for us. We did open 2 in 1 year, and my wife said she'd definitely divorce me if I ever tried that trick again.
Well, that was going to be my next question was not about the divorce. You'll be relieved to hear. I wondered if there was ever a point where you felt like you were growing too fast.
I mean, first of all, I think if we return to the inflection points, I think growing from 1 to 2 for us is the most difficult thing because, I'm a great believer that you take from your existing team and you give opportunity for them to grow. So very typically, you might take an established restaurant manager from site 1, put them into site 2 because they know what they're doing, and then you promote the number 2 restaurant manager in site 1 so he's surrounded by people that know what they're doing, and so on and so forth. Going from 1 to 2, you've only got one donor hotel to create the next hotel out of. Whereas once you've got 6 hotels, then you've got 6 donor hotels to create the next one. So it becomes easier. So I think 1 to 2 is that would be my first inflection point. And then there's something about double digits that in terms of numbers of hotels, you get to a certain scale and everything just requires a bit more than winging it, and my management style is I get in the trenches with everyone and I try to show by example. You can only do that to a certain extent, and by the time you get to 10 sites, you just physically can't get around to them all and do that. So you are reliant on building a team, and one of the things we were very successful at doing was, particularly, it's not a given in hospitality that people stay a long time. It's quite a transient workforce. I think the stat when I was there was something like 1/3 of total employees had 5 years or more service. And within that, quite a few that had even come from Hotel de Van and were still with us. So they're eating and breathing the culture, and they understand instinctively how I might react to a situation or what might be an absolute yes or an absolute no. So you're reliant on these very trusted lieutenants to actually spread the culture and ensure that is coursing through the veins of the business.
Do you grow your own senior, or did you in the past grow your own senior management? Or did you have to bring in, I'm thinking about, I don't know, but a key hire might be an operations director that you poach from somewhere else, or is it all homegrown?
All homegrown. In fact, the business name for the umbrella organisation is Homegrown Hotels, and it's not just about the veg. We apply that very much to the team as well. It has changed a little bit since I've been gone, but our group ops director became the CEO. 3 regional ops directors were general managers, that had come up through the ranks, two of whom had been with me since Hotel de Van days. On two occasions, we hired in general managers from outside for new properties. We ran out of homegrown talent. So in that case, during the process of putting a hotel together, tends from getting planning permission to opening doors, it's give or take a year. And I would spend just a huge amount of time with that incoming general manager every day, whether we were carting around boxes and or sitting down discussing menus or staffing rotas, and you just spend day after day after day. So it's total immersion. So even though they came from outside, by the end of it, whether they like it or not, they're starting to walk and talk like Robin Hutson.
You break them down. What kind of a leader are you, do you think? Are you a bit of a pain in the neck? Are you tricky, or are you a benign presence?
I'd like to think I'm constructively tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm pretty fair. I often say hospitality, it's not complicated, it's just a million details. And it's true, that's exactly what it is. And so everything should be considered. If we decide that glass of water should be that size and of that nature, then it should always be that. And sometimes you turn around and some clot has ordered something completely different to that, and you think, where the hell did that come from? We know what that glass of water is, and so that attention to detail is critical. And on the occasions I got upset is usually about some detail that someone has been cavalier with, because it's been considered. We've put it in that glass for a reason. It could be a combination of size, look, cost, durability, the whole bunch of reasons why we've chosen that glass. And it's not for someone else to mess around with at that stage. So I'd like to include them in the decision initially, but once it's been decided. There's probably, 200 decisions on a tabletop of that ilk before you start eating.
You've talked really interestingly about how you got the vision and also then how you grow that vision. But how do you maintain that authenticity? How do you stay true to that brand throughout the growth process?
I think you are reliant on these trusted lieutenants to a large degree. Before a hotel opens, I sleep in every single bedroom. And when I say sleep in every bedroom, that means sleep in every bedroom, try every shower, try every bath, sit on every loo, open every window, and that's part of the process. But then on an ongoing basis, as I travel around to the properties, I would never just go and have a meeting for half an hour and disappear again. I would always go, as would the ops directors. They would always go, they would stay, they would have dinner, they would experience that as a guest. So that's the first line of quality control. But then we have mystery shoppers. You've got continual feedback from every quarter, particularly these days. So you've got direct communication with the guests when they're there. They soon tell you if something is not right or what they like or what they don't like. Of course, you've got the TripAdvisors of this world and so on as well. So you put all of that into a melting pot and you try to separate the sense from the nonsense.
How have you funded your growth?
As far as the pig is concerned, we, as I say, originally we were 50-50 equity with Jim and the management team, and then bank debt on top of that. And that's the way it has continued, except for Jim Ratcliffe was putting in commercial loans, so not money for free, but proper commercial loans and bank debt together. So we've used both strands of that. And, I didn't have the resource to keep up with the equity injection continually for, these properties are expensive. to buy the freehold of a pig and get it up and running and open the doors, it could be anything from 10 to 20 million. They're quite...
To set up one?
One, yeah.
Because you buy old, lovely properties, don't you?
They're all listed. There's a cost to refurbishing that sort of property. The Pig at Combe is a Grade 1 listed building. We have numerous Grade 2 listed buildings. So, they all take a bit of cash to maintain them. Yeah,
a lot of cash, but also a lot of hassle. I mean, anyone who's ever had dealings with anything Grade 2 listed, let alone Grade 1, I mean, how do you even begin to make a commercially viable building? I'm thinking about the Pig at Harlyn Bay, for example. That was just a sort of very beautiful 17th century farmhouse.
Yeah.
How do you walk into that and think, I can make this work?
Well, if I have one skill, I suppose, I find that bit very easy. I can walk into a building and instantly I know whether it could be a pig or not. I mean, we need sort of 30 bedrooms, so you need a way of either having 30 bedrooms by, I don't know, converting stables or adding huts or whatever you do. But instinctively, the ground floor of pretty much all of the properties that we have, I've walked in, decided within half an hour how everything is going to go, and rarely does that change dramatically.
You can see it.
Yeah. Maybe my O-level art came in handy. Maybe there's something visual that I can, I don't know.
Piper talks about building brand legends, and that's what we're here today to talk about. It's the importance, isn't it, of brands staying resolutely true to their purpose. Can you encapsulate what is the Pig's purpose?
The Pig's purpose is to be genuine, authentic hospitality. I don't believe in gimmicks, and sometimes actually I often think the word brand is overused because I don't see our hotels as a brand per se. They have a brand, but they are something other than a brand. They are living, breathing, 24-hour a day, 365 day a year hospitality centres. And there's many, many aspects to it. The million details that I've talked about before, it's the collection of those details that really creates the Pig experience. But it's underpinned really by a team culture, I think. We try to have an overriding spirit of generosity. We try to have a kind culture. We try to look after our team, the guests, the suppliers, the community. It's a sort of 360-degree circle of stakeholders that we try to pull into our world. Yeah, we have a logo that people recognise, of course, and we have a strapline of the 25-mile menu that probably some people might recognise as well. And they're both genuine and true, but I think it's the spirit and the culture that is actually, which is quite hard to define, and I'm struggling to define it now, but it does exist. It's a real thing.
So what makes the Pig better and different?
Well, I think taking the kitchen garden as the central plank, if you like, of the offering is something that no one else has done. I mean, there are plenty of hotels and restaurants with kitchen gardens, but I don't think anyone else has brought that completely to the fore. We've put a lot of time, resource and effort behind that. It's not just a plaything. Often you'll read something about a hotel or restaurant and they'll talk about their kitchen garden, and when you go to look at it, it's a bit of parsley and a couple of onions.
So yours really does supply your hotels?
Absolutely.
Because I confess I thought it was a pretty thing to have.
No. My eldest son, Ollie, he's the architect of the kitchen gardens. He runs the whole lot. We have our own central nursery where we grow all the seedlings, and if I told you that his spreadsheet for his growing plan for the year of 100 beds per property times 4 seasons times getting the right amounts of seedlings to the right place at the right time, is is a full-time job, certainly for him and his team. He employs about 30 kitchen gardeners. This is not a plaything. This is really a deep commitment to it. So I think the point of difference probably starts with the kitchen garden. I think our look and feel that I've described before as this organic, natural, honest, not scary interiors that Judy designs is often, there's a lot of copycats out there these days, but I don't think many people really completely nail it. So I think that's a point of difference. And again, the well-established, well-trained team where, as you know, the pig's now owned by private equity, so they might give you a different answer to this. But my mantra has always been that you look after the product and the people and the profit follows. And that is, I think, a cultural difference to many operations.
Who are your customers? Who comes to the pig?
We've got a pretty broad church, actually. When we set out initially, and actually I had the same philosophy with Hotel de Van. I wanted to be not too scary for the greyer-haired brigade, of which I'm one. So it shouldn't be off-putting and it shouldn't be overly trendy, but kind of cool enough for the kids as well. The greatest joy is when you look across at one of our restaurants and you see families, you see business people, you see girlfriends out for lunch together, you see old people, young people, and that's a successful restaurant, and I love seeing that. So it's a very broad church, and that's specifically for the restaurant. But in terms of staying in our hotels, obviously London is really the hub, and where we are all spokes from London. The closest hotel to London would be the Pig at Bridge Place in Kent, which is less than 2 hours from London, and the most extreme being Cornwall, the Pig at Harlyn Bay that you mentioned before, which is whatever it is, 5 hours on a good day, I should think. So we are London-centric. However...
But rural, though, aren't you?
Yes, they're all rural locations, and when I'm finding locations, I like our properties to have a sense of place. But I also have my own deciding factor, and it's called the darling factor. Mm-hmm. And the darling factor is, darling, would you like to go to the New Forest? The answer is probably yes. Darling, would you like to go to Woking? The answer is probably no. No offence to the good people of Woking, of course, but it's
not a destination.
It's not a destination. It doesn't sound sexy. It wouldn't pique your interest. Cambridge passes the darling test. Canterbury passes the darling,
It's the idea of a destination. So how do you talk to your customers? How do you communicate with them? That will have changed, obviously, over the years.
Yeah, it has. And I do have a constant ongoing battle with our young marketing team who believe that the only way to communicate with people is via social media. And, of course, if you look at this cross-section of people in the restaurants that I've just described, there's a good number of people in that restaurant that wouldn't give 2 seconds to social media. So, we use a database of existing customers and we talk to them continually. We tell them what's going on. And, very traditional sort of marketing, apart from social media and those other channels as well. We don't do any hard advertising. We use PR a lot, and we've, over the years, we've built up really strong relationships with journalists. People know who we are in the travel trade and so on. We have various partnerships with other brands that we like and respect and so on. So where there's opportunity to do things together, we like to do that.
Influencers?
To a degree, but it's not something we chase. We try to make friends with interesting people, and so that they become part of our tribe of some quite influential people, not influencers, but influential people that hopefully talk about us well in the right places. But the best form of marketing is to those who have already been. You've done a good job, and you get them to come back again. Mm. We're a bigger business now, but we've tried to be as non-corporate as possible. We're trying to, even though, as I say, we're 1,000 employees and we're 10 sites, and we're trying to still give the impression of being home knitted and that genuine sense of hospitality rather than something that's come out of a boardroom somewhere.
Can we talk a little bit about the challenges? COVID, how did you get through that? And also Brexit. How much of a problem was that for you?
Well, I mean, it was almost Brexit and COVID you have to talk about together, and because it was a perfect storm for us. A lot of the workforce, and I'm talking generally about hospitality, not specifically about the pig, but generally a lot of the workforce returned to their own countries. Eastern Europeans in particular, and Europeans, full stop, returning home either for work permit purposes or because of COVID and just needing to get back home somewhere that they could be based, never to return. So there was a real squeeze in the workforce just around that time, particularly just sort of before and after COVID. Where our properties are located, they're all in areas of there's lots of well-educated middle-class kids who are on their way to university or coming back from university, and we survive in a way by adopting these individuals who, they're great because they know how to look someone in the eye. They're self-confident very often, and they may not be choosing hospitality as a long-term career choice, but whilst they're deciding what to do or filling in, as I say, in holidays or whatever, we've always done very well with that crowd. So you need a few people that really know what they're doing at the top or infiltrating and career hospitality people, but they can be supplemented by that sort of team. And so we're well placed. So we've never been over-reliant on Europeans generally as a business. But when you take all of that workforce out of the overall hospitality pool, then the effect, of course, is that there are less people around. So it was tough for a couple of years. I think it's settled a little bit now.
When you look ahead, do you feel gloomy about the business?
I mean, I think good businesses will find a way. I feel really sorry and have done all through the COVID, and I spent a long time talking to government and so on during the COVID period.
Did you?
Yeah.
And they listened?
Well, I spent a long time talking to government. That's just
OK, we'll leave it there.
But I feel really sorry for the small businesses, the small pubs, the mom and pop cafes. I mean, it must be super difficult to manage all of that. We have slightly broader shoulders and a little bit of heft within the sector, but to just be hit time and time again with additional costs. I mean, how much can you charge for a cup of coffee and a bun? I mean, it's hard.
It is hard, and I wonder whether it makes you think, wow, I've had the best of it.
I do feel a little like that. I mean, I've done 50 years in hospitality, and I'm semi-retired now, and I'm actually pleased that I'm not trying to grow a business right now. I think it's super difficult.
If you were trying to do the same thing today, I wonder how difficult it would be. I mean, you have been so successful, haven't you, personally?
Well,
I wonder what you put that down to. Was it luck? Was it timing?
There's always a bit of luck and timing, that's for sure. I think keeping your eyes open and recognising what's going on in the world out there and seeing if there are some gaps and trying to catch that zeitgeist of the moment. I have personally never really been driven by a desire to make a load of cash. I think I've been much more driven by the desire to be successful. And perhaps that comes from failing my O-levels, I don't know. Maybe it does. But certainly it's not cash. I've got everything I need and have had, luckily, for a good period of time. So, I'm not in the business of trying to make gazillions.
You're not a yachts and
No.
flashy holidays kind of guy.
Well, I like a holiday, but
not a flashy one, perhaps.
No.
I'm wondering how you've changed over the years as a leader. You started out, you had your great hotel training and so on, and then you were bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and had lots of ideas. Something must have had to change over that 50 years to make the success that you've become, however you define that?
Yeah, I suppose you learn to become a little more focused about things. I mean, certainly the second time around, the Hotel de Van, when we started that, we were flying by the seat of our pants. There was no two ways about it. We were considering the detail, but I don't think we had a clue really how to really run and leverage the business. And we did it incrementally. We grew that business one by one and slowly kind of learnt our craft of running a business, I suppose. We knew how to run a hotel, but I'm not sure we knew how to run a business. So yeah, I think it's a question of experience as you go. You gather a few extra skills, don't you, along the way, and if you can retain those and apply them in a good way, then I guess you get away with it.
Yeah, I'm wondering what your advice to other founders would be. A 20-year-old wannabe Robin Hutson, what would your advice be to someone starting out?
I do think it comes down to hard work and the old adage of the harder you work, the luckier you get. I mean, there is an element to that. Definitely having your eyes open to what's going on in the world. But also, I always say when people come to me with new business ideas and things, I always say to them, okay, that's a great idea, to have a sloppy Joe sandwich shop in Knightsbridge. But, have you worked this out on paper? Have you really broken this down? Do you know how many sandwiches you need to sell an hour to actually pay the rent and so on and so forth? So if it doesn't work on paper, it definitely won't work, in kind of real time. In our sector, you get a lot of youngsters that, I don't know, want to open a cocktail bar or want to, whatever it is. And they tend not to have thought it through. And I always send them away and I say, okay, go and put it on a piece of paper, the numbers, and then bring it back to me and let's have a chat about it. And some of them just never come back. It's just probably saved them quite a lot of grief just in
You probably have. Yeah, it's good advice, I guess. So you have stepped aside, you and your wife Judy, 68 now?
69 in 2 weeks' time.
Okay. You said semi-retired earlier in our chat. Do you think you're ever someone who will fully retire?
I like doing things and I like being in business. So I still look after Limewood, and that has a ski hotel, a sister ski hotel in Courchevel. So I look after those two still for Jim. I'm involved heavily in an English sparkling wine business, Sugru South Downs, which I'm enjoying a lot. And the founders, Dermot and Anna Sugru, are probably the best winemakers in the UK. I put some cash into the business and I became chairman and trying to help steer that for them. So that's good fun. I'm really enjoying that.
You had a few health problems, didn't you? You had a brush with prostate cancer.
I had prostate cancer, and actually it was... It's very strange that Nick Jones and we have followed each other in many ways, and he was the one that told me to go and get a scan because he had it
Wow, okay.
before I did. But my father had prostate cancer. So, of course, I went along, got my scan, and lo and behold, I had prostate cancer. So I had the surgery and so on, and I'm okay. So,
my goodness.
Thankfully. And that was definitely part of the thinking, quite apart from 50 years in hospitality, like cat years. It feels like 350 years. You're only on the planet once, aren't you? And as much as I have loved so much of my career and building those businesses, it was important that we actually had time whilst we're fit enough to do some of the other things in life. So we're trying to travel a little bit more, and we've got 2 grandchildren now, so we're trying to be good grandparents as well.
Oh, that's great. It's lovely to talk to you, Robin. Thank you.
Thank you very much.